Exodus 13. The Lord said to Moses, "Consecrate to me every firstborn male. The first offspring of every womb among the Israelites belongs to me, whether human or animal." Then Moses said to the people, "Commemorate this day, the day you came out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery, because the Lord brought you out of it with a mighty hand. Eat nothing containing yeast. Today, in the month of Aviv, you are leaving. When the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Hivites, and Jebusites, the land he swore to your ancestors to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, you are to observe this ceremony in this month. For 7 days eat bread made without yeast, and on the 7th day hold a feast to the Lord. Eat unleavened bread during those 7 days. Nothing with yeast in it is to be seen among you, nor shall any yeast be seen anywhere within your borders. On that day tell your son, 'I do this because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt.' This observance will be for you like a sign on your hand and a reminder on your forehead that this law of the Lord is to be on your lips. For the Lord brought you out of Egypt with his mighty hand. You must keep this ordinance at the appointed time, year after year. After the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites and gives it to you, as he promised on oath to you and your ancestors, you are to give over to the Lord the first offspring of every womb. All the firstborn males of your livestock belong to the Lord. Redeem with a lamb every firstborn donkey, but if you do not redeem it, break its neck. Redeem every firstborn among your sons. In days to come, when your son asks you, 'What does this mean?' say to him, 'With a mighty hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. When Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord killed the firstborn of both people and animals in Egypt. This is why I sacrifice to the Lord the first male offspring of every womb, and redeem each of my firstborn sons. And it will be like a sign on your hand and a symbol on your forehead that the Lord brought us out of Egypt with his mighty hand.' When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though that was shorter. For God said, if they face war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the desert road toward the Red Sea. The Israelites went up out of Egypt ready for battle. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, because Joseph had made the Israelites swear an oath. He had said, 'God will surely come to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up with you from this place.' After leaving Succoth, they camped at Etham on the edge of the desert. By day the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so that they could travel by day or night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people."
The first word,
consecrate. Okay, verse 2, consecrate. Consecrate, another way to say consecrate is to make holy. And Holy, make holy. In other words, prepare this to be ready for God's use. Okay, so to be holy in the Bible, actually, many people think that it must be perfect because God is holy and we have to be holy, so we have to be perfect just like God is perfect. But actually, the word in the Hebrew and in the Greek really just means to put aside for God's use. So anything you put aside for God's use becomes holy. Right? So it can be a cup, and you say this cup is only to be used for God offerings in the temple, then it becomes holy. Or if you have a lamb, and you say this lamb is now to be dedicated to God and sacrificed, that will be a holy lamb in that sense. So to be holy people, Israel had to be set apart from the people around them. The Canaanites were unholy, they were ungodly, they were sacrificing the children to their gods and so on and so forth. They have temple prostitutes, and God says to Israel, you be holy, you be different from them, you come out of them and be different from them. So here, consecrate your firstborn is to make sure you dedicate your firstborn to God's use, both animal and human. Yes.
Could we use this word in the other situation?
Yes, to consecrate what actually you're always in a religious context. Yeah, you cannot say consecrate in any other context. It's always a religious context.
Holy in Latin is like sacrum.
Sacred. Yeah, holy. Yeah. So saint is another root, word from the root sacred. Okay, other words? Moses took the bonds of Joseph with him because Joseph had made the sons of Israel swear an oath. He had said, God will surely come to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up with you from this place. Do you know where in the Bible does Joseph say these things? Genesis where?
Genesis 50.
50, very good. If you read the notes there on the side, Genesis 50, well, you know, that's very good, you might know that. Yeah, but anyway, you can tell from there. Genesis 50, verses 24 to 25. Yeah? Okay, so you just turn back the previous book.
I know it.
Very good, you might know, very good, you know it. So, chapter 50, the last chapter of Genesis. So the book before Exodus is Genesis, the last chapter, verses 24 to 25. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will surely come to your aid and take you up. Very familiar, right? And then verse 25, and Joseph made the sons of Israel swear an oath and said, God will surely come to your aid. So that's where it comes from. So 430 years ago, Joseph says, I'm dying, swear to me, take my bones with you when you leave Egypt. Joseph knew they were going to leave Egypt. Why? Because he knew that God had promised Abraham, Genesis chapter 15, you will be in Egypt for 430 years and then you will leave. So Joseph had faith that God one day will take the Israelites, come to their aid, bring them help and bring them out of Egypt into the promised land. Because ultimately the promise to Abraham was not Egypt, not Canaan, not Egypt but Canaan, the promised land. Remember, yes, to remember and celebrate. Not just remember but celebrate. Commemoration. So on the 1st of July, Canadians commemorate the creation of Canada, and they call it Canada Day, right? And that was in 1867. So the Union of Canada was formed, the country of Canada was formed in 1867, and every 1st July, Canadians commemorate that day. Okay, commemorate. Any other words? Verse 7, I think you know unleavened, right? We've explained that many times already. Let me give you a bit more background actually. You know, leaven, today we think of the word yeast, and the word yeast is the same, leaven and yeast. You make bread from, say, wheat, you knead it, and you roll it, and you press it, and it becomes, a lump of dough, D-O-U-G-H, dough. And you bake it like that, it becomes rock solid hard. So you need to make it fluffy, you make it rise, and you put yeast inside. The yeast is an organism that creates carbon dioxide, and the carbon dioxide will rise up through the dough and makes it bigger and bigger and bigger, and it becomes fluffy. So that when you look at your bread, you've got holes in the bread, right? Because of the air bubbles. So that's yeast. But yeast is an organism. It's actually it flies through the air and all that.
It's not a mushroom?
It's a fungus, yes. It's a fungus. Right. So what happens then is the ancient Israelites, the mushroom is a fungus, yeah. The ancient, and Rachel sells a lot of that in her shop.
think Chinese
mushroom
love
pie
it.
and all that. Yeah,
They love.
the Chinese love. Yeah. So you have the spores that is a living organism. That's why it has got, it takes in oxygen to produces carbon dioxide. Now, the ancient Israelites were not so sophisticated. Today we know how to make yeast and control it and so on. What happens is they would leave some of in this case, the harvest in March and April would be barley. So they leave the barley to ferment. And as it ferments, it goes sour, it becomes, and then of course the spores in the air flying around and they land on it. So the fermentation process takes like at least 7 days. And during that fermentation, what do you think the people in the house experience?
Smell.
A very bad smell. Very bad smell. Fermentation produces a terrible smell because the organisms are dying. Yeah? Like Japanese natto fermented bean is stinky. Chinese chou tofu is stinky. Soy sauce is stinky. Actually, I love soy sauce, right? I'm Chinese, right? And I was living in an American home when I was 17 on exchange high school. In high school and on exchange. So I stayed with this American family, and I remember every morning I would come down and I would boil 2 eggs, but half boiled. Then I crack it, I put soy sauce and pepper, and that's my breakfast. I still have it for breakfast. And then my American brother would come down and say, "Oh, yeah, this is so stinky, what is it you're eating?" And I would laugh. I would laugh because I thought he was joking. Because how can soy sauce be stinky? How can egg be stinky? No, I don't think he's talking about my food. And then many years later, when I married Dorothy and we went back to the home and we went to the same home, right? And same kitchen. And then by this time, David had already learned how to eat soy sauce. I changed his life. So he's eating soy sauce and he was cooking with soy sauce. And I came down upstairs and, "What's the stinky smell?" I was saying the same thing that David said 20 years ago, 10 years ago. It's like, now I realize soy sauce is stinky. Anyway, so yes, fermentation produces a stink, and it's alcoholic too. And to the Jews, they don't take alcohol, and a stink is always a stink. So what then does it represent? To the Jews, eventually, yeast represents sin, corruption, because it's stinky. So on this most holy of weeks, for 7 days, they remove every single leaven or yeast in the house so that nothing in the house stinks. It's a fresh smell. They clean up the house. It's fresh. It's a brand new life to commemorate, to remember that night many years ago when they left Egypt and began a new life. And also because of the fact that they were rushing, so they had no time for putting yeast in the bread and wait for the bread to rise, because it takes a long time to rise. Normally they'll make the dough in the night, put the yeast inside and wait till morning, and by morning it's bread. So they have no time this night to do it. So they had no yeast in the bread. Right? So that from something that actually happened, it became a memorial for the rest of their life, that they will now always remember to clear the house of yeast on this very holy week. 7 days they have to celebrate. The first day is called the Passover, and the other 6 days would be the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And as I said, it normally takes about 7 days for the new batch of yeast to start anyway.
Is it the same matzot? Is it the same
Yeah,
bread
matzot. Matzot is
they were
unleavened bread.
using before and now?
Yeah. Probably the recipe has changed a little, yeah. Yeah, but it's matzot, yeah. They still use it. Okay, so that's unleavened bread. And Jesus' disciples and Jesus himself used the the image of leaven to mean sin and corruption also, and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. Do not be sinful like them. Let me now refresh our memories with what we did last time. We talked about inductive Bible study, right? Or I jokingly say the CIA method, right? You see, you observe, you investigate, A, you apply. Okay, now the CIA is famous again, right? Or notorious. They're in the news. But CIA, to see, to observe, and the questions you ask when you observe. So remember Mr. Howe, his wife, and his 5 daughters. So what are the observation questions? What, why,
When,
when,
What?
who, yeah, what, yeah. Okay, so you have how, you have why, you have what, when, who, which, where. Right? So Mr. Howe, his wife, and his 5 daughters. Observation questions usually are these. So who is involved here in this story? Chapter 13. God, Moses, Israelites, Egyptian. Okay, so that's the who. When? You do not know the year, but you know the month. Abib, which in modern calendar is March, April, the spring. What? No. Which will be where?
Promised land.
Egypt.
Not yet. It's
Not yet.
Egypt.
Haven't
Yeah.
come out.
They haven't come out yet. Okay, Egypt. So what's happening? Yeah, escape. What's happening? The instructions from God. Yeah, consecration and so on.
It are bringing the revelation.
What happened? Okay. So what happened? Okay. Now, so those are observation questions. And after you observe the questions, you ask the why questions, interpretation. Why? Okay. So CIA. So you observe, and then you interpret. When you interpret, you can use what? What is the meaning of this, right? What is the meaning of consecration? What is the meaning of the unleavened bread? Why do they use unleavened bread? Because they have no time to eat leavened bread and so on. So why and what will be your interpretation questions? Okay. What else can you ask? What's the meaning of this? Why is it happening? Why do they have to do it this way? And like you will look at verse chapter 13, verse 17. Okay. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though that was shorter. Logic tells us if you want to go from point A to point B, you take a straight line. And it's the shortest distance. But God did not allow them to take the shortest distance. If you look at the map of Egypt, this is the Mediterranean Sea, and then the Sinai Peninsula, Egypt on this side, Israel on this side. Okay, and the Red Sea is here. So Sinai and Peninsula. So they were here. So the shortest distance to go to the Promised Land was like that. And this was the highway, very, very busy highway. Jokingly, I call it 401, right? So this is the 401. Instead of taking the 401, they went down this way. Why? That's an interpretation question. Why? Verse 17 tells us why. What's the why there?
God was concerned that they might face a war.
Okay, that God was concerned that they may face war. Why? Why was God concerned they will face war? What happens when you face war?
Because of that there was a Philippine.
Okay, but
people. Yeah.
somebody said something? Richard, you say something?
No.
because of that, okay, the Philistines were here. Philistines were a group of people who occupied the land there already, and they were very fierce fighters. And the Egyptians had a lot of fortresses. This route is very important for them to have a lot of fortresses around here. Can you imagine a whole bunch of people walking around here, running away from Egypt, and all the Egyptian forces are there, and all the Philistine forces are there? They will be fighting and fighting and fighting until they get so tired and discouraged. They will go back. So I gave up. I don't want to go to the promised land anymore. Let's go back to Egypt. I think it's nicer being a slave. At least we get food. And in fact, that's what happened throughout the journey. They keep saying, I think I want to go back to Egypt. At least there I had garlic and I had leek and I had meat. I had food to eat. Now what am I eating? I'm eating, what's this? Manna. Manna means what? So they're eating what? The husband comes home and say, wife, what do you cook today? She says, what? Yeah, I say, what? Yeah, what?
What's for dinner?
What's for dinner? Well, what? Mana? Very funny conversation going on there. It's just like a joke that we had, no, when the president of China was a man called Hu Jintao. And so George Bush asked his Secretary of State, so who is the president of China? Who? Yeah, who? Who what? Who is the president of China? Who? Yes. Anyway. Alright. Yeah, you know what who, yeah. So you have an interpretation question. What? Why? And here the why is because if they had gone by the shorter journey, the Philistines were there, the Egyptians had fortresses there, they will be so discouraged as they fight all the way they want to go back to Israel, go back to Egypt. So they will be discouraged, and God was merciful. God knew that was going to happen. Yes. So God says, before they change their minds and go back to Egypt, I am going to show them the long route. The long route. And this is the route nobody wants to go because it's all desert. So they walk through the desert.
Why?
Why? Well, the Egyptians will find it hard to chase them.
What kind of taste?
Other than that, you're looking too deep now. Just look on the surface first. And the surface is you walk through desert. You may be lost, but the ones following you cannot find you. Right?
They will be lost.
They will be lost too, and they cannot see your tracks because your tracks come and then the wind blows and the tracks are gone. It's sand. So they cannot find you, but you'll be lost. But God had already provided for that. Remember? Who spent 40 years in that same desert?
Moses.
Moses spent 40 years. He knew the desert like the back of his hand. He knew how to survive in the desert. He was looking after stupid sheep. So he had to do everything for them. 40 years looking after stupid sheep in the desert. Now he's doing the same thing, looking after stupid Israelites. So he had an experience, 40 years. No sweat. God had prepared him already. But the Egyptians were not. But the Egyptians were not prepared. That's one.